Sugar and Spikes is a science-backed and semi-sarcastic mental health podcast for a new type of business leader. Mental health concerns are occasionally addressed, but this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, mental, physical, metaphysical, or otherwise. That's a job for your doctor or therapist, not a podcast. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to a special episode of Sugar and Spikes. We are continuing our not mid-season, our end of season interim before we kick off season 3. Super excited about season 3. Season 2 is great. There are so many awesome conversations that if you haven't listened to, you definitely want to go back and check out between myself and our resident psychologist, Tammy. If this is maybe your first time listening to the episode, I'm Des. I'm a serial content creator. I kicked off Sugar and Spikes just over 2 years ago. We finished out season 2, and now this is our second of 4 episode series, like interim between seasons. Normally it is myself and my co-host Tammy, who's a psychologist, but because of where both of us kind of stand in terms of things demanding our time and attention, just in terms of life, we're taking a little bit of a break, but it didn't feel great to me to leave everybody hanging, so that's where these kind of 4 episodes come into play, where it's me going back to basics, the way the podcast started, which is a little fun that it's come full circle of just kind of talking into a microphone and letting the spirit lead. So this is going to be a little different than what we generally do, but welcome, glad to have you, and let's get on with the topic at hand. Okay. What I wanted to talk about this week is the idea of content creation. I opened this episode by saying I am a serial content creator. What does that even mean? That means I make content. Like, whenever somebody's like, oh, what do you do? If I'm not in the mood to really get into what I do for like my 9-to-5 job or what I do on the side, like if I'm just not in the mood and I just want to like give a 1-sentence thing, I say I make things, and not in the like I'm a maker, I'm a tinker type of thing. That's cool. That's not my skill set, but like I make content. I make things that are complicated, easy to understand. I think that spreads between my full-time job and what I do on the side. I've been doing Sugar and Spikes, like I said, over 2 years. Before that, we were another company. Before that, we were a blog. So I've been doing this off and on for probably 4 years, give or take, by now, in some form or fashion. So that's why I really wanted to kind of start from the basics, like sitting here in my living room, not my office, because I have a portable setup now versus when I was, a newbie podcaster at my computer. But like sitting just a girl and her mic, it's bringing me back to the basics, and that's what I really wanted to talk about today. And why content, right? Why content for entrepreneurs? Why content for folks who have a 9-to-5 and a side hustle and have so many things going on? And why do I have to make more content? Because content is what helps you create that relationship. Content is what helps you position your authority, even if you feel like you don't have any. If you can explain something clearly in a way that connects with someone, that gives you a level of authority. Content is what separates us from the robots. Though interesting, there was that article where I think it was Chase who got rid of like 20 jobs or like moved people into different positions, in quotes, moved people around, because they were doing like AI for content and that got a better ROI, which is really interesting. But we're not Chase, and content is still king, especially when it comes to one-on-one personal services and things like that, when it comes to kind of very niche expertise. And so being able to put content out there, it really sets up a platform to be able to develop a relationship that you may not even be aware that you're fostering. People that read things that you don't even know, are reading them or listening to things and you have no idea that like the words you say have an impact. I've had that experience countless times, honestly, and I've been blessed and lucky enough and, thrilled to get really, really genuine feedback in times when people have had good experiences with the podcast or with social media posts that I've posted. People that I had no idea like who they were. But it created this initial form of relationship. And when people have a relationship, in general, they're more likely to buy from you. Be it, if you're selling, I don't what's the latest like trendy direct sales thing. I don't know. I'm not even going to name one. Wish wine. There's like a wine one that's cool. But by putting your story behind it, it helps people set you apart from going to Target and buying the wine. For businesses, it keeps you at top of mind. And when it comes to blogging and podcasting and stuff, it can help with like SEO, and if you have potential leads, um and like if you're pitching them, then you can say, well, I've kind of talked about this topic and I do have expertise in this topic if you go listen to this podcast or if you go read this blog post, things like that. So content is still king. So this is a very long-winded intro to say you got to be making content. It's super important. I really don't like to be the voice that adds stress to someone's life, but if you're not I was gonna say if you feel like you're not capable of making content, then like hire it out. But this episode, my goal is to really show you that there are easy ways to do content or easier ways to make the creation of content a bit more accessible. So I wanted to kind of start from this feeling of content overwhelm of, oh my God, what am I even going to talk about? What is this going to look like? What am I going to write about? There are so many things. I have so many thoughts, so many things. Okay. Chances are you've made forms of content before. You've written a paper in school. You've posted on social media before. You've had some sort of stride where it's felt good, right? So think back to those times and think back to what really kind of got the juices flowing, right? What were you doing? What did it look like? Did you have a certain drink? Like, I know when I'm just at a complete loss for words, I'll make like a martini or something, and that'll help me kind of get out of my way. I'm not saying alcohol is the answer. I'm saying that we all have skills that we can kind of reference when we need to. The other thing is thinking about the things that, you can just get lost in, um, and going for it. So when I first started working on the book, and yeah, Sugar and Spikes has a book coming out. We're all very excited. More on that later, like later on in season 3. But anyways, I started it off doing a free write. The idea of writing a book was just entirely too overwhelming. And the idea of continuing to write a book throughout the process, like 6 months in, was still so overwhelming. So I created this agreement with myself that I would write a couple of sentences on whatever like I was feeling that day that I thought, needed to be heard. That helped, and it got into the flow of connecting things to the book. The other piece is you don't live in a vacuum. Like, that's one thing. Like, there's so much pressure to be like, oh my God, what am I going to say that hasn't been said before? And, how am I going to stand out? You're going to stand out because the format of words, the style of words that you choose is going to be different than what anyone else has chosen, assuming you're not plagiarizing things. And don't plagiarize things. If you're putting the effort into the work, don't plagiarize. Your voice, your tone, your perspective is going to be different because no one's coming to the table with the same experiences that you have. So, one thing that I've definitely been known to do is set a timer to scroll through either like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or something like that. And maybe it's like 5 minutes, something like that, 3 to 5. Like nothing super long, but enough time to like see some things and, start thinking about everything. And then respond to whatever stood out, because we're not talking in a vacuum. Even if it's a podcast or a blog or anything that seems very one-sided, it's not a vacuum. It's not a one-way. It's not a one-way street. It used to be that the idea was, if you could stand on a soapbox and talk about anything for 30 minutes, what would you talk about? That's not the game. That's not how people interact with content anymore. It's, if you could sit down with 15 of your closest friends or coworkers or peers, what would you talk about at that point? And what would the conversation look like? That's where the art kind of comes into it. That's where the unique perspectives, that's where, the posts that take it to a different length, that take it to a different depth, really come into play. So, be a voice in the conversation. I've gone as far as to screenshot and black things out. I don't do that all the time. I don't do it often. But I'll frame it up by saying, I've noticed there's been a conversation about this, and I think, and then putting my thoughts out there. And then, to increase engagement, asking, what do you guys think? I think so often we have this idea that we have to reinvent the wheel and we have to stand out to be this like celebrity. And that's not it. Really, when it comes to creating content, it's showing that you can think through things enough that when someone wants your services or when someone wants to connect with you, they'll know that they'll be seen as an individual and not just put into some like simple formula. Everything with regards to social media is turning into relationship building, which is what marketing is. So just shouting and just having like these 3-step formulas isn't the way to, it's not the way things are going to continue on. So don't feel the pressure to have things like that. That's also where authenticity comes into play, and showing your human side of, I don't know everything, but in my experience, it's been this. Which is really one of Sugar and Spikes' biggest strengths, is Tammy and I come to the table of saying, we don't know everything. Kind of the motto for the podcast is, it depends. And tell me more so we can get more insight, right? So we can get a better understanding. And that's the thing with content. It's entering it with this curiosity and proposing possible thoughts. Aside from that, one other really quick way is, as cheesy as it sounds, like, I have some of the Affirmator decks, which are awesome, and I'll have a link to that on my website if you're not sure what those are. But I'll read one of those, and it's the same thing as like the social media stuff, where like I'll read an Affirmator card and then I'll have a response, and then that gets the content going. So maybe if you're doing something with tech, you have like a tech of the day email and you open it and you consume a bit and then you respond. Like, that's what I'm getting at, is consuming a little bit on a restricted timeline so you don't get caught up in the drama, and then having a response and being a part of the conversation, because that's what social media is. That's what content is. It's a conversation. And do it in a way that works for you. I mentioned at the beginning of this, think of the times when things kind of worked and, things clicked. go back to that point, think about the things that were going on and, what could you recreate to kind of help that situation come into play, and also realize and recognize that things aren't always going to come easy, and, you can only get those gems of wisdom by plowing through the rest of the dirt. So for all those really great quotes that you're going to put on like Pinterest and stuff, you're going to have hours of content that's going to be fine. People are going to be okay with it, but it's not going to be absolutely fire, but it may be for your audience. Like that's the thing. Just because it doesn't feel like fire in the time doesn't mean it's not going to be fire for someone else. And that's why like it is your duty and it is your responsibility to make the content so people can connect with it. That's all I have for today. Make the content. Get it out there however you can. Have fun with it, because if it's not fun, you're not going to want to keep doing it. But even if it doesn't, even if you don't feel like doing it one day, you have to do it, because whatever's going on in that moment, someone's going to connect with, and it's going to fuel them at a later date. You got to show up in some way, some shape or form, so people know that you're part of the conversation. That's what I got for today's kind of Sugar and Spikes solo version. If you like what Sugar and Spikes is doing, if you like kind of the tone that we have, go ahead, leave us a review. If you're interested in what season 3 is going to look like, go ahead and subscribe. It's coming up in a few weeks. We have 2 more of these special episodes before we come back in kind of full force. And also, feel free to share us with someone you think needs to hear this. That would be awesome. So yeah, subscribe, review, share. That's all I'm asking for. And if you have any questions, if you want to get in contact with me, you can reach out to Sugar and Spikes Pod on Instagram, or I'm across all of the social medias, be it Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. I am Dez, D-E-Z, WMSMBA. So I'm available if you have questions, suggestions, tangents, whatever. I'm here. And I will be back next week with another special solo spiel. Bye, guys.